Hello, everybody. This is Paul from We Love Games. I was trying to get this video out before I leave tomorrow, so I figured I would put out my thoughts, my spoiler, recap, review, full book spoilers, everything for episode 5 of The Wheel of Time. Typically, I would put this out on Friday, but I will be in the air tomorrow around when I would typically do that. So I figured I'd just get it out of the way now. If you like my content and stuff like that, please feel free to subscribe, like, and everything else. And I also stream daily on Twitch, usually between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. You can always drop me a follow over there. We discuss Wheel of Time, play games, and I've also been working on the card game that I've been working on for like 5 years, and I let everybody see a little window into my design philosophy. So, on to what you really are here for, the thoughts about the episode, the most recent episode. So I've had one viewing. I have not had 2 or 3 like I typically would before I make the video. So this is going to be a little bit more rushed, but it is nice to see that everything is kind of lining up. And this was also the first episode where we did not get necessarily a cold open. Cold opens typically have to do with something that is either related to the story but in the past, and technically that gets by with this because of something I was not predicting, and it was one of the first things I said out loud when I was watching the episode, which is the 1 month later, where we get a full time skip of a month. So we have a month of the travels that we are completely skipping, so we don't see a lot of things that go on between Matt and Rand. We also don't see a lot of things with the Tuatha'an, but it also might add some credence to the philosophy that Perrin tries to adopt, the way of the leaf and things like that. So that's all kind of good, but it was something I was not expecting at all. And also, it makes absolutely no sense for Valda to be there based on that unless he had time to travel back, because he said he was going south, which is the opposite direction of the White Tower. So that adds some continuity to that. So we have a bunch of things that go on, and as per usual, I will go in order of importance and how I view things, but it is nice that all of our characters are getting back together. Like, the whole band is getting back together again. And I did find some things interesting, so let's move on to it. So the first thing that we're going to go over is, and also just like because of the nature of how everybody's converging, I'm going to not do the typical order of like least important to most important, because everybody's kind of together by the end of it. Sans like 2 of them, but it's close enough. So here's the recap. So we begin with the cold open. Like, again, I'll get back to the technicality of that, of the funeral. So we get the funeral scene with all the Aes Sedai. Extremely important. I do like a lot of what they did with the symbology and the visual spectacle of it. And you get to see, like, if anything was being driven home in this episode, it was the bond between Mortar and Aes Sedai. And a lot of things that happened in this episode are amalgamations and things that happened in the books. So we did not get a Warder funeral or an Aes Sedai funeral at all in the books at any point. So getting to see this just deepens the impact and shows the fear that Lan is having about ever possibly losing Moiraine, or vice versa, because he doesn't know how Moiraine would take him being gone. So we get that, which is fantastic. And you have this very emotional scene, and I watched some of the special features. It was not supposed to be snowing, and it snowed, so that made it more emotional. And then we get that beautiful 1 month later timestamp, which I was audible, like, wow, I was not expecting them to just put a 1 month later. You know, it's kind of like that whole eventually in SpongeBob, which is hilarious in the show. But in this case, it takes a lot of context out, but it also gives them a bit of a cheat where it's like, hey, we can just, advance the plot. Because a lot of things that happen between then and there, it's not that they're not important. It's not good. To me, it's not good to skip over possible character growth, but you do see the effects of a month of time. You see Perrin and Egwene smiling and laughing, which is something that Perrin, I thought, would have a much harder time doing in a short time span. And it makes sense, that Perrin he's embracing this passive culture, this peace-bearing culture. But he even announces, like, I'm getting bored of, like, the vegetarian food, and that could be the wolf coming out in him, but we get to that later on as the story progresses. But the main, like, subplot with Perrin and Egwene, I'm going to go over now. So Perrin and Egwene try to flee. Valda remembers their faces, which is something that is very significant. He pointed that out in episode 3. And Valda is, being himself, or actually, was it episode 3? No, it's episode 2, where he's suspicious of anybody. Now, I do find it interesting that Valda's character is, like, I don't know if he can detect that a woman's channeling. Maybe he has some inherent power, kind of like Min or Logain or, Suon, where he can detect that someone is capable of channeling. Maybe that is the exploit that he's been able to utilize to, find Aes Sedai so successfully. And so, because there is no indication whatsoever that Egwene can channel. Now, granted, no woman gives off an indication they can channel, like, at all. So it, again, makes very little sense that Valda would be able to single out people and be so successful at singling out people unless he had some inherent power. Maybe that's what they're building towards in the books, but essentially they wash. The whole washing scene might come across a little odd. I actually had to pause the show and explain to my kids who were watching it with me that the whole thing is that the White Cloaks will not handle someone that is dirty because they don't want to dirty themselves, and that's like a whole, it's dehumanizing them. It's a typical, type of thing to psychologically impact your prisoner. And I thought it was very well done, and it was tastefully done because we did not see any nudity, which, it's not that I'm against nudity in the show because we know it's inevitable. We already saw it lands, but the overall of it is, I like how they did it, where they did not just exploit, like, oh, here's some boobs or anything like that, because it makes it more tasteful and it does not sexualize the situation, which is very good. Past that, we have Egwene tied down. We get confirmation that Valda is aware that women who can channel do not need to have hand motions to channel. So again, we still don't know what it is about Valda that is, making him able to detect that a woman is able to channel. But he is highly suspicious of Egwene and does not mind carving, lines into Perrin's back. Now, we do get confirmation of Perrin's golden eyes in this episode, which is fantastic because it means that they did not deter from the Wolf Brother thing. It looked like they weren't going away from that in the last episode, but this is more of him, becoming akin to the wolves, realizing that he can semi-communicate with them. He blatantly states the wolf's not going to hurt us when they go to escape, which that is how everything happens. Egwene embraces the source and is able to burn the ropes enough to let Perrin escape, and that terrifies Valda. So anybody that was wondering why would Valda drop the knife, well, this is why. Because Perrin looks like a monster in this scene, and it terrifies Valda because it's not what he's expecting. And again, we're not privy to combat. Like, that's the whole thing, is I don't think that Valda could actually hold his own in a fight, possibly, in this series. Now, in the books, he is a blade master. He did not have his sword. He only had a knife, and he's not going to overwhelm a giant angry Perrin, who is now accessing some of his wolf senses. And the wolves are the ones raiding the camp. We don't get Elias. That's sad, but that's okay. Moving past that, we get them escaping. Now, what really bothers me is that they were so close to just having everybody meet up. And they did pull them away, which is fine, because it adds a bit of a delay, and it gives us time to get Matt's character healed by the Aes Sedai, and it also gives us time to establish more stuff going on in the White Tower. So we'll move on to that. We cut in with Rand and Matt walking towards the White Tower, which appears to be with another caravan, not necessarily Tinkers, but just another group of people heading to the White Tower, which is actually very similar to what happened in the books when they were traveling to Caemlyn. So what they've done is they have combined the events that happened in Caemlyn with the events that happened in with Tar Valon instead. And they have centralized the narrative to go to Tar Valon as opposed to Caemlyn, which, while it makes a little bit more sense, it does not make sense geographically. Also, I want to know how the boys managed to avoid any shadow spawn the entire duration going to Tar Valon. Now, the philosophy could be the Fade or the Murdral fear the dagger that Matt has. They can follow it, but they're scared of it. We also get another bit of the whistling. So some people have pointed out, Waddup and other people have pointed out very blatantly that the whistling, it appears to be the leitmotif and the thing that they are building up to be Padan Fane's thing. So Padan Fane is involved. I have no doubt in my mind that Padan Fane potentially is playing the role of Mordeth, and he planted the dagger for Matt in order to get Mashadar out of Shadar Logoth. So that's my philosophy right now in terms of like my excitement level. Is it's very nice to embody Mordeth as a potential character that is trying to fulfill things, and it also it kind of takes away a bit from the narrative, because there is supposed to be a difference between the evil of Shatter Logoth and the evil of the Dark One. So maybe Fane is playing on a different, like, maybe he's just playing on this third team from the very beginning and nobody knew it. So past that, we get Rand and Matt going into the Light's Blessing instead of the Queen's Blessing. It's a change. We don't get the innkeeper. I forget his name right now. Basil Gill. We don't get him, which is kind of sad. And we have Rand meeting in the library, and he gets spoken to by an Ogier, which is, it's makeup. People are gonna have to get over it. That's just my opinion. I'm sorry, it's makeup, but I enjoyed the scene. And you get to see a copy of Travels of Jane Farstrider, significantly thicker than I thought it would be. And Rand is also looking for the Koreathon cycle, because he's trying to find a solution to Matt, who is becoming way more dark than he ever has. He's shouting at children. He's scared that he's the one that killed the little girl at the farm. He's scared that he killed the families. He has a lot of fears, and he is potentially getting convinced that he could be the dragon, which is scaring him. He does not want to be the dragon. And we get this scene where Matt travels through the town in Tar Valon, like through the city, and they're parading Logain through. As they're parading Logain through, Matt and Rand are both on a balcony, and they see Logain. And this is also pointing another time that I had to pause the show to explain to my kids. Logain has an inherent power, similar to some other characters in the story. There are unexplained powers that are given to certain characters, and one of Logain's talents or powers is the ability to see ta'veren. So that could explain potentially what he saw when everything happened with Nynaeve, but we already found out from Sarah Nakamura that what was seen with Nynaeve was actually nothing involving the weaves. It was just a light that was emanating from her due to what she was doing without any form of control, and it was debris and rubble that was making him turn his head. So again, that's how Sarah explained it. We need to trust Sarah. Sarah's the boss of everything going on in terms of continuity, so don't doubt it. If Sarah says it, end of story. If she says something very clear, it needs to be an Aes Sedai moment where you say, okay, we believe that. So Logain laughing and chuckling, the only people that got his attention with that was Matt and Rand, and they were very, very, very careful to not show Rand in the shot, but he was looking at Matt and Rand. So he's aware they're ta'veren. He knows that these people could potentially change the world, and he is laughing because his fate was not what he thought it was. At least that's my philosophy on it. Moving past that, we have Moraine, Lan, and Nynaeve entering the city with Steppin. And Steppin is the central focus of a majority of this episode, and we get a lot from the episode overall for that. Steppin is going through the grief of his Aes Sedai dying. Steppin is having to deal with the fact that he could not protect her when she needed it most. He's blaming himself. There's a number of things that he is doing, and it's just a spiral of depression, and it is a normal thing in the books. If an Aes Sedai is killed and the warder survives, the warder typically goes into a berserker rage in an effort to avenge the Aes Sedai and does not care if they die in the process. And he went into that berserker rage. He was not able to die, and so now he has to live with the grief of her being gone, and he does not have her anymore. There's discussions that Alana is going to bond him if he's willing to take on the bond in an effort to try to take away the pain, but Steppin is against this, but he's also considering it, and he receives some herbs from Nynaeve to be able to go to sleep finally, or at least sleep better than he has been, because he can't bring himself to fall asleep because he just wants to hang on to the pain, because that's the only way that he feels like he actually has a purpose anymore. This is all very well done. You get to see a relationship built between Steppin and Lan. You get to see how Lan is starting to be worried for Moraine in case anything ever happens, if he's ever not able to protect her. Because, again, 2 times in the last month or so, she has been on the brink of death. Once saved by Nynaeve, the other time saved by another Aes Sedai who just died. So Lan is having a hard time with this potential reality that he could fail her. Now, we know in the books that he does eventually fail her, but it's not by his own volition. He does everything he can to try to save her, and he's unable to. Which, again, they're highlighting and bringing this up, which I think is good because it's building up to the reality that it's going to happen eventually, and maybe Lan is going to know how to get through the grieving and the pain because of what he's gone through already. Again, more special feature stuff. They went over funerals, and I really like what they did. They did a beautiful leitmotif type of thing with a woman singing at the beginning and a man singing at the end of the episode, doing tones that are out of the range of typical men and women for the opposite sex. So that was very well done, and one is more of a formal ceremony for a woman, while the other is a formal ceremony for a man. This is all very good in terms of the context and culture, and I really like what they're doing with the culture of it. And the thing is Lan showing all that emotion. Again, something that Daniel Green and other people that put out videos were a little upset about in the trailers. You saw Lan screaming, but the thing is, they explain is that they followed this process of having a single person to grieve for a group and letting one person show emotion as opposed to the entire group pining over it and holding in that emotion forever. So Lan is expressing himself, and the episode ends with that being the end of it, with Lan screaming and going through the funeral. And I thought it was very well done, but I wanted more. Like, this is one of those episodes where I want more. I wanted the episode to keep going. I want episode 6 right now. I don't want to wait until next week to get episode 6. Like, I want to know what keeps going. Now, past that, we also have Nynaeve being put, and again, I'm kind of jumping around, but Nynaeve being put in the warder's quarters to avoid Liandrin and the other Aes Sedai. Moraine even blatantly states in plain old English, once I find them, I will tell you. I will not keep them away from you. But Nynaeve, being Nynaeve, doesn't want to listen. She also gave the sleeping tea to Steppin, which he used to semi-drug Lan so he could commit suicide, which is, it's partial to it, but it also explains why Lan was running through the tower. So Nynaeve still has her herbs. She's trying to help in the best way she can, and I bet you that Lan is going to keep this a secret from Nynaeve because he doesn't want Nynaeve to feel guilty for what she did, because in her mind she won't view it as directly assisting someone with suicide, but she may feel guilt for, putting Lan in the grief state that he was in. Because Steppin even points out that it's very obvious that she has fallen in love with him, and Lan alludes to that entire thing where he says, warders, or widow's black is not what I want to give a woman, because we haven't gotten Lan's backstory, but all of us that have read the books understand that Lan is sworn to commit to a war and commit to fighting the shadow for his entire life, even if it means death. So because of that, it's not something he wants to entertain. We also have more mentions of things about, like, again, polyamorous relationships, things like that, between Alana and her 2 men and the warders, and they start cracking jokes, and you think everything's going to be okay, and it doesn't. And another thing that I want to point out is I haven't gone back to count, but Steppin is trying to ward off the Forsaken. First mention of the word Forsaken in the series makes me happy. Also confirmation that there's more than one. But I think that each of those statues that Steppin was waving the incense around represents one of the Forsaken. I saw a clear one for Baalzamon. I saw a clear one for Grendel because chest. I mean, there were some... I got to go back and watch it in terms of Easter eggs, but it was very interesting to see that. But moving to the rest of the story, Nynaeve, being Nynaeve, has a conversation with Liandrin. Liandrin blatantly states, this, that, you're allowed to do this. You don't have to listen to Moraine. Again, encouraging Nynaeve to go against what Moiraine is doing, because Liandrin does not want Nynaeve to have her power isolated to the Blues or potentially another Aja or be under Moraine's thumb. And there's also more mentions of, like, you get so much tower politics and it's so well done. There was a little bit of awkward scenes. Again, Alana and Moiraine in bed together speaking. The way that they just look kind of comfortable with each other. Liandrin stroking Moraine's cheek. This is all things to give off that Moiraine is either, homosexual or she is, bisexual. So either way, it's setting up that there may be some level of affection. They even tease that with Leandrin's description on the X-ray stuff. Whenever you check it on your phone, you can look up pictures, and if you look at Liandrin, it says that her and Moiraine have a complicated past, which, again, this may be alluding that they are doing what they were talking about last night on the Dusty Wheel, which is that they may be combining Elaida and Liandrin. This would not be good in my opinion, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they're taking away the fact that Liandrin's a dark friend. Maybe they're making her into Elaida, because there's also a theory that potentially she could be the other, I forget her name right now, the other dark friend, Red Aja Aes Sedai, who's in with the Shido camp. I can't remember her name right now, but if anybody wants to tell me in the comments, thank you, I appreciate it. But the thing is that we get all of that. And then we have just, Loial walking in saying like, hey, found that braid in the tower grounds. Look, and there's this really strange moment where you think Nynaeve would stay with Mat and Rand. She doesn't. She apparently goes to Mat and Rand, does this thing that people were talking about on the Dusty Wheel last night, tries to help Mat, and Mat does his typical, I'm going to strike out at you, then apologizes because he can't, control his urges and anger, and Nynaeve just kind of leaves, and then she's at the funeral. So Nynaeve knows where the boys are, hasn't told Moiraine, clearly, or else they'd be in the tower with them, and, past that, we have this whole issue where Mat and Rand are still isolated, so Mat's still being infected by the dagger, and you just have this ending where, again, it feels like there was like another 10 minutes just to get like possibly some of that reuniting thing, but we have, at the end of the episode, Egwene and Perrin have escaped the White Cloak encampment. Egwene stabbed Valda, which was really satisfying, because all my kids hate Valda, which is fantastic, because they're writing him that well. And I had to explain to them, he's not a dark friend. Like, in the story, he's an example of how people can corrupt their own mentality to follow a darker path. Like, he even blatantly states, do I follow my oaths? Like, am I really sworn to my oaths? Do I have to follow those? When he's interrogating Egwene. This is all good to build up this character that is not a likable character in the books. He's substantially a huge jerk. So, past that, we have them possibly fleeing back to the tower. I don't know how they're going to get their sense of direction. I don't know how far away the White Cloak encampment was from Tar Valon, but they were within eyesight of Tar Valon when they ran. So hopefully it's not that far, and everybody can reunite in the next episode. Perrin can get his back healed, because, again, he may be one of those that wants to keep the scars to feel like he's, deserved that pain, because he even stated that when he was being tortured. Like, I deserve this. But past that, we have them there. We have Mat and Rand in the city. We have Nynaeve back in the tower under Moiraine. And there's also mention that, apparently Moiraine has two enemies. The two enemies being Liandrin and being Suan. But if they're following the book logic, Suan is feigning that she is Moraine's enemy. She's doing this on purpose to avoid people looking into what she's doing. I had an epiphany with all my kids and everybody when we were discussing the books, the Ajas and things for my children. And the thing is that they've always pointed out that the Blue Aja is supposed to be the ones that seek out justice. Well, here's the problem. The Blue Aja, I noticed, are the only ones that mention eyes and ears. So none of the other ones mention eyes and ears outside of that they have agents of their Aes Sedai, but in terms of eyes and ears, like actual people that report back to the Blues on a regular basis, not really mentioned in the books that often. So I have equated the Blues to be spies. That's just me. I think that they are the information gatherers that are then able to bring forth justice by the information that they gather. But I don't think that they are just like the police, because they're not the police. They're the ones that are getting all the info to help the people that are the police. But either way, so past all that, we have all these things going on, and people saying that Moiraine should go for the Amerlin seat. Moiraine blatantly states, I'm not, and I don't want to be the Amerlin seat. But again, I think this was something else that was brought up in New Spring, because they wanted to have Moiraine become the Queen of Carian when she became an Aes Sedai, because then they would have an Aes Sedai that is a queen. And Moiraine blatantly stated she did not want to do that, in the books, at least. So, moving on past all of that, I'm going to do my typical thing at the end. Again, all my stuff was kind of scattered everywhere that I went. I was just giving my thoughts, my immediate impressions of the show. But my favorite scene. Call it what you want. Anybody wants to be upset about the prosthetics. Anybody wants to be angry about how Loial looks. Feel free to be angry about how Loial looks. But do not discount Hamon's performance. Holy crap. This character took me... I get goosebumps just thinking about how good his portrayal of Loial was. Oh my god. I want him in every scene. Every scene he's in makes me happy. Just how bumbling and clumsy he seems to be is like, did you know I could just walk into the tower? Did you know I found this braid? Oh, the braid is very distinctive. I was able to find the woman that you described. Like, I loved this. It was so good. And call the prosthetics what you want, okay? I don't like his hair. That's it. The only factor about him is I don't like his hair. I don't like it. Because 1, I can't have hair that long. 2, my hair's not that curly. And 3, I don't think it matches the skin tone. But I love the conversation between him and Rand. It is my favorite part of this entire episode, because Rand draws a sword and Loial's just like, you silly human. Like, it's so funny, because he's just like doo-dee-doo, you know, you dropped this book. How could you drop such a book? And he's just looking at him like, an Aielman. He doesn't mention that the Aielman has a sword. But he mentions, like, it's an Aielman. And Rand's like, I'm not an Aielman. And he goes, an Aielman that denies is an Aielman. I like oddities. And that is my favorite part. It is so great. Because it's just Loial's character. It's exactly who he is. He's just curious about the world, leaves the steading, which he still hasn't told anybody. But he just leaves the steading because he's like, I want to go look at things. You're different. Can we talk? I'll talk to you. And they clearly talked off screen because Rand never described Nynaeve to him. But then Loial comes in and goes, did you know I found this woman for you? And I love it. It's just, I want him in every single freaking scene from here until the end of the season, until the end of the show. He's my favorite character so far in terms of everything. And this is not me just, like saying all you haters gonna hate. No, I don't like his hair. I don't like his hair, but that's it. Everything else, the smashed in nose, I couldn't tell if he had tufted ears. He isn't big and huge, obviously, but he is a big dude. But still, it's just, don't rag on Loial. Don't hate on the boy, okay? The boy is our boy, and we need to love Robert Jordan, because that's who he is. That's Loial's character in the books, is Robert Jordan. He just wants to write stories. He wants something interesting. He follows interesting things so that he can write things down, and he is the entire personification of what Robert Jordan would do in a universe if he could. And I love it. I don't yell at Loial. Don't be angry at Loial. I don't care if you don't like his hair, because honestly, the hair is the only off-putting thing for me. If I could get away from the hair, maybe everything would be fine. But you know what? It's okay. I like their decision. Rafe blatantly stated in a Reddit AMA, if we had to do CGI on every single scene, we couldn't put him in more scenes. I want him in more scenes. I want him in every episode from now on. Don't take him away. And you guys can disagree with my hot take, but you know what? Anybody that is saying that Loial looks ugly, take him out of the show, burn it, kill it with fire, I don't even care. Daniel, I challenge you too, because you even said when you saw the still, no, take that, throw it away, get something different. You know what? Just keep it how it is. If we can keep it how it is, guess what? Loial's in more scenes. Just end of story, okay? Anybody wants to complain? Loial in scenes. Means I get to listen to big rumbly tongues. I get to listen to big awesome man that is one of my favorite characters in the story. I want it. I want more of it. Don't take him away. Don't take away the boy. Anyway, if you guys have listened to my entire rant and heard me scream about Loial. Mainly, I was jumping around because I was trying to avoid talking about how much I love Loial until the very end of the episode. Please like, subscribe, and enjoy this show, because time skip or no, it works. It works. I mean, you have people fighting with guilt, you have people fighting with reservations and with fears. Just enjoy the show, and don't hate Loial, because we need more of him. And if they take away my boy, I will be very, very sad. So anyway, that's all I have for you today. I will be flying out tomorrow, and I'll be spending time with my wife on a well-needed vacation. I hope to see you guys back next week. And please like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitch if you're interested in hearing my ramblings on a more regular basis. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good rest of the night. Bye-bye.